This is Dungeons of the Oak Dell. Now this is a draft and write style game, as you are rolling a bunch of dice of two different colours, and then you are drafting those dice to do things on your player sheet. So the dice have two main kind of actions, so the first of which being your movement, as you're going to move around this dungeon in a bird's eye view, trying to avoid traps, unlock treasure chests, fight bad guys, all this kind of stuff you would expect with a dungeon crawling game. There are different missions as well, so you can play different scenarios. But the second use for the dice is probably the most interesting part of this entire game, which is the dice is going to show you which of these spots on these enemy sheets that you can cross off, and you're going to draw a line from this particular colour to another colour on this wheel. Therefore you're going to have straight lines crossing through your enemies. And then the way you actually deal damage to your opponents is that whenever you, say, do another attack and you cross an already existing line on that enemy, and that kind of intersection where the two lines cross each other, if that's over the actual enemy itself, then you're going to inflict a wound on that character. The enemies work in different ways. So for example, I think one of them was, the more damage you do to their wings, the more they hit you back, this kind of thing. So I thought it was a very novel and creative combat mechanism. I think even for uniqueness alone and creativity alone, it deserves, some credit for that. The dungeon crawling stuff is, is pretty standard. You do have different objectives, one of which is to visit certain locations before a certain time runs out, this kind of stuff. And of course, with the dungeon crawler, you have the potential to kind of buy new items and increase your stats as you go on to make you more resilient, or to use these potions to boost you, even to get better equipment to make you kind of avoid traps and stuff. So yeah, there's lots of, there's basically all the hallmarks of a dungeon crawler that you would like. Scales very well. It is mostly a multiplayer solitaire. But that means that you can play it on your own and still have the full experience. So this is actually a game I would play solo mode, because it's rapid, quick, and you can just focus on what you're doing. Very simple kind of mechanism when you play solo, where when you draft your die that you want, I think the next strongest die on the board is taken away. And I didn't mention as well, like sometimes you're not always incentivized to take the most powerful dice, because if you do, I think it means the enemies hit you a little bit harder. So you do have to strike that perfect balance of when to move, because you do have to move the exact amount, when to hold back, when to go get the treasure, when to do all this different stuff. And again, all the time you're fighting against the clock. So I think there's going to be different versions of this available. I know there's going to be a print and play version, which would be straight up brilliant for this style of game. I believe it's going to be a very affordable price as well. And I think they are also doing physical copies, so you can kind of choose which you want. But again, if you like simple dice drafting, roll and write style games that isn't roll and write, it's a draft and write, good dungeon crawling, fancy mechanisms, and even like the art style is somewhat charming, because it has this kind of crude, naive style where it's all like hand drawn, but it somehow works for the game, which I think is quite nice. So enjoyed it. It's probably not a game I'm always going to go back to, because I tend to like maybe more abstracted roll and write style games. But this one I certainly wouldn't turn down, because it plays quick. You can invest in your character. You can approach the game in different ways, and it's fun. So that is the Dungeons of the Oak Dell